Your day is never better than when you spend early morning spending time with God. I'm Pastor W. Lonnie Herndon. I want you to get ready for morning meditations. Listen to one of our ministers of the gospel share a word that's going to bless your life as you begin your day.
Good morning and welcome to Compassion's Motivation. My name is Pastor Willie Singletary. And this morning I want to look at Colossians chapter 3, verse number 23. I'll be reading from the New Living Translation, which says, "Work willingly and whatever you do as though you were working for the Lord rather than for people." For the next few moments, I want to ask the question, what is your perspective? Our perspective, the way we interpret what's happening around us, can make or break us in any given situation. Our perspective shapes us, how we think, how we engage with people, how we act in our everyday life. Perspective creates opportunity to grow and opportunities to step out, or how it can hinder our progress and restrict us. Clues to what type of perspective we have is in some of the phrases we regularly say or think. If your perspective leans to the negative, you may not even be aware of it. Thinking the worst can be the second nature after years of doing it. But it can be influencing how you live life and keep you from getting the best out of it. See, a negative perspective says, I can't. But a positive perspective says, I can. A negative perspective says, I will never, but a positive perspective says, I will. A negative perspective says, I could not do it, but a positive perspective says, I will try. A negative perspective says, that's always happens to me. That never happens for me. That's not possible. It's language negative and it's limiting. It's reactive versus proactive, seeing the bad in people and in situation. But a optimistic perspective, its language is positive and overcoming. It is responsive and proactive, choosing to see the good and in people and situations. See, a faith life perspective says, I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. I am more than a conqueror. I can do all things through God, because with God, all things are possible. Positive perspective says that failure is a part of learning, then we can do the hard stuff. We need to turn our negative self-talk and make intentional decisions to transform our perspective from the inside out. And God is calling us to have an enlarged perspective of his faithfulness and power as we step into the close of this year. And so as we come to our text, God sometimes has a totally different perspective for us. And so Paul gives us this text for us to change our perspective about going to work. He challenges us to align our perspective with God's perspective and see it from his vantage point. As we come to our text, Paul says, if we're honest, sometimes work can be frustrating. Oh, I wish I had a witness in here. We may not feel appreciated, paid enough, much, and don't think others work as hard as we do. You may also feel as though you're not making much of a difference in the world with your line of work, and as though you could be doing much more for the Lord. These are all feelings we probably felt one time or another, or might even still be wrestling with it. But I love the exchange the Bible often gives believers. We credit to our account so many things. The truth is no exception. See, we do not need to be in full-time ministry to work for the Lord. The work of pastors and missionaries, while important, do not carry more weight for God than being a gas station attendant. Why? Because it's not what you do, it is who you do it for. This perspective changes everything. This means there is a purpose in whatever station in life we are called. It is amazing to know that when we work hard for earthly bosses, we actually working hard for Christ. Our work assigns values, and if we keep focused on the truth that we are working for the Lord, then even minimal tasks seem important. Knowing this should give us a fresh perspective. Even each and every day we ought to serve wholeheartedly. Here's how the Amplified Bible records it. It says, whatever we may be your task, work as is heartily from the soul, as something done for the Lord and not for men, knowing with all certainty that it is from the Lord and not from men, that you will receive the inheritance which is your reward. See, the church has a mixed group of members. Some of them were even slaves. Paul specifically addresses the slaves in today's verses. He tells them to work heartily because they are really working for the Lord. Think about this for a minute and let it sink in. Remember today that no matter what you're doing for a living, you are working for the Lord. You don't have to be a missionary or staff pastor, a minister of music, or some type of full-time ministry. Where you are right now can be used for the service of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And regardless what God calls us to do, we must remember we're working for the Lord. When we work for the Lord, we should give it our very best. We should give it our all because we're working for the Lord. I hear Dr. Martin Luther King saying we should set out to do the work so well that the living and the dead or unborn couldn't do it better. Now, this doesn't mean that everybody will do the so-called big, recognized things in life. Very few people will rise to heights of geniuses in the arts and the sciences. Very few collectively will rise to certain professions. Most of us will have to be content to work in the fields, in the factories, and in the streets, but we must see the dignity in all labor. What I'm saying to you this morning, my friends, even if it falls your lot to be a street sweeper, go on and sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures. Sweep streets like Handover and Beethoven composed music. Sweep streets like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets so well that the hosts of heaven and earth will pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper who swept his job well. If you can't be a pine on top of the hill, be a scrub in the valley, but be the best little scrub on the side of the hill. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, then just be a trail. If you can't be the sun, then be a star. It isn't by size that you win or fail, but be the best at whatever you are. And when you do this, you are mastering the length of your life and you're working at your best ability. The reason we can say this and be joyful in this is because our reward is not a promotion or a pay raise. Our reward isn't being employee of the month or a bonus, but our real reward will come from God. His retirement plan is awesome. It makes absolutely no sense that he would reward us with an inheritance simply for applying this principle of working wholeheartedly. But this gives incentive to keep the right attitude and perspective in all things. My grandmama used to say it this way: payday is coming after a while, so work while it is day. And I want to suggest today that my brothers and sisters, that wherever you're going to work today, you ought to change your perspective and not look at your boss that's at your job, but know that you're working for the Lord in heaven, and he is going to reward you because payday is coming after a while.